Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Music and Moonsalts. I am your host, Chris Bordine, and today it's the beginning of June, so a new series of videos. We're gonna be starting off again this month with the rock and roll retrospective, much like we did last month. And we're gonna be talking about Metallica today, the mighty Metallica. I got Joel Pearl coming back to talk some Metallica with me. Today we're talking about 1996's album Load, which is a polarizing album in the Metallica universe. I myself am a very casual Metallica fan, but it's nice to talk about, like last month with the Chili Peppers. It's like talking about things that aren't necessarily in my wheelhouse, to get people's perspectives who this would be their wheelhouse, and that's Joel. So, but before Joel comes on, I want you to please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers. It's very important. Like the video. That's also very important. And leave a comment. Let me know what you think. You can follow me on Twitter at IbanezChris. Facebook.com/Music and Moonsalts. You can like me on there, and I'll also post the links in there to the videos. Or if you want audio, Anchor.fm/Christopher-Bordine5 is the place to go for that. And they will point you in all the various directions you might want to go for that. So, as I said, Joel will be on here in a minute, talk some Metallica, so sit tight. All right, everyone, as I said, back again on the old podcast here. We have Joel Pearl. Joel, how are we doing today?
I'm wonderful. It's a beautiful sunny day. I can't complain. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been recording this on a holiday week here in the States, and it's a nightmare in my industry. So, yeah, not fun, but other than that, can't complain too much. So,
Well, we can talk about Metallica. That's going to make everybody happy, right?
exactly. So, yes, we are talking today about the Load album by Metallica. Came out. This doesn't even seem real. You know, we talked about it last time with Weird Al. Like, these albums, 25 years again with this album. Like, it's
It's our childhood, and all of a sudden, it's smacked us in the face that we're getting older.
yes, exactly. So this was an interesting album to kind of dive into. I would call myself a casual Metallica fan. I know, I know a lot of the catalog, but I don't know everything by any means. I've never seen them live, though I want to. They're one of the last couple bands left on that bucket list that I feel like I have to see at some point. But I do remember when this came out, and not necessarily realizing it. My dad actually had this album. My dad went through a phase in the early to mid 90s where he was into like Metallica and stuff. So I particularly remember him having the Black album, and he had the Live Shit box set and all that came with that. And then I remember him picking up Load and listening to that. So but speaking of the Black album, that came out in 91, 5 years prior to this, and spoiler alert, Joel and I are also going to talk about that here in a couple months. But 5 years between, and the Black album is like one of the biggest selling rock albums of all time. Like, it's massive.
Beyond massive at this point. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
I look forward to talking about that too.
yes. And so, it comes out in 91. They go on tour for forever in support of it. And now here we are 5 years later. And in that time, we've had the rise of grunge. And I don't know if we're quite on the other side of that hill, but, Nirvana's already gone. You still got Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam doing their thing, though. So, as the larger Metallica fan of the two of us, kind of from where you're at, where was the band at this time?
So yeah, just to preface, like you were saying, I am a big Metallica fan. That was like where it was my bread and butter. I grew up listening to Metallica. I had all the merch. I was always into the music. I bought Load. I used to I guess rent or take out Load from my local library. I
Yes.
got them to bring that in, and I would take that out. And that and Megadeth's Cryptic Writings. I remember at the same time like
Okay.
picking up those albums and listening to them. And like the only other band that I was like so largely into are these guys right here, Motorhead, and
Okay.
that was a huge influence on Metallica as
Yes.
well. So yeah, like you're saying, this is coming off of the Black Album, and everything's changed in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, we're post grunge, or at least post like the expansion and explosion of grunge. And you know what the two big albums from 96 are that really forced Metallica to think differently?
I do not off the top of my head.
It's Green Day's Dookie and the Offspring's Smash albums. Those were massive
Okay.
records.
Okay.
So we were getting towards like the punk explosion
Yes.
of the late 90s that came
Yes.
in through the US and Canada, through North America, really.
Yes.
So like all of a sudden Metallica's like, we want to do differently. We want to make things a little more like Black Album, and getting further away from Master of Puppets and And
Mm-hmm.
Justice for All. And they hated And Justice for All. And we're going to talk about that when we release the Black Album stuff. So they get into Load, and Load is just an album that's full of like everything's different.
Yes.
And you see, I think Load loses a lot of points in the eyes of the fans of Metallica. It's not because of the music and the timing. It's honestly because of the stuff that was going on outside of the music. All the photo shoots and all the artwork, and the way that it was Kirk and Lars kind of driving the artistic vehicle outside of the music for
Mm-hmm.
Metallica. And James hated that. And James hated everything that wasn't his own creation. He
Mm-hmm.
said that multiple times. That's his struggle with power and being in control.
Yes.
So that was a big thing. That was a big storyline in Load as well. And I think a lot of it plays out later, as we find out in Some Kind of Monster,
Yes.
in the way that the band, the tensions rise, and things kind of get worse and worse. Load was a seminal moment for James trying to give up control, but also not understanding that with the idea of giving up control is being okay with some of the decisions that are made outside of his control.
Right.
So he still wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
But when he gives it up to Kirk, and Kirk comes back and does all of this stuff on the album, all these different solos and different styles, and James comes back from a long vacation that we'll talk about when we get deeper into the album, and James is like, well, we can just toss it all out if I don't like it. That was the agreement.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
Load is such a weird and amazing album because of everything that's not associated with the music.
Right.
And that's what I love about it.
Right. So everything away from the music, I do remember with my kids at school who were big Metallica fans, and just to talk on when you heard people talk about it on the radio, they cut their hair. They did the cardinal sin in rock and roll, and they cut their hair. That was a huge thing. And then Kirk is wearing like eye makeup, and it's not threat, like you said, it's not Master of Puppets. It's not even the Black, like they took it a whole like 5 leaps forward from where the Black Album was.
They went out and what they did Woodstock in 94,
Mm-hmm.
and they turned it into, it was all about money for them doing the Woodstock gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about rock and roll to them. Like they released merch that was kind of tongue in cheek, but it was also like, we're just here for a paycheck.
Right.
That's what Metallica was slowly turning into at the time, and cutting their hair. Yeah, that messed a lot of people up. But it also, in reading reviews, it's like reviews of the album were good,
Mm-hmm.
but then there were people who were hating on the album because they didn't like that they cut their hair.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is a bridge too far. But like, I get it. It's an identity thing.
Yeah.
But we've learned in metal that like your identity is not based on your long hair. It's based on your ability to play the damn music,
Right,
and tell the stories.
yes.
But yeah.
And then the album cover, you want to talk about the album cover? I always, it's funny, you know, right before we clicked record, I was telling you about how I listened to a Talkers Jericho podcast from about a year ago where him and Frankie Kazarian and another fella talked about load and reload. And I, up until I heard that, I had thought that it was Flames, that these were
Same
Flames
here.
on the album cover. I had no
Totally.
idea what actually the album cover is.
Yeah, I remember looking at it and being like, oh, that's just Flames. I remember Reload looking more like Flames than Load.
Yeah.
And so all these years later, well, I'll let you tell the story of what it is, because
Well, so
when I found out, I was like,
load is a couple of it's a slides, one of blood, and I believe it's from a cow, both blood and semen, kind of smashed together and yeah, through a microscope and whatnot. So yeah, that's definitely weird.
Yeah, it's strange. And again, James hated it.
Yeah.
He hated that, and he hated the Reload one. I have a quote from James just because I found it and I was like, this is perfect. This is about Reload, but it goes to both. He said, quote, "I hated it, but it had to match. It's matching hatred. I'm not a big fan of the man and his perversions. There's art, and then there's just sick mother effers. He's one of them." And he laughs. He says, "The thing is, they belong together. I don't care if this guy blows donkeys. The art had to match."
All right,
and it's the fact that like James just comes across as like, I hate it, I understand it, and then he tosses in a little bit of humor, and it's like, all right, we'll move on.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And I don't think most people knew what it was until someone figured out, that it was Andres Serrano and it was, bovine blood and semen. It's like, what?
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing too about, Reload and having the match. That one I believe is blood and piss.
Yes, it is. Yeah. That one, like I said, it looks more like fire because piss is yellow.
Yeah. But these were largely the songs, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, were largely at least written at the same time. They didn't have them all recorded, obviously, at one time, because the intention was to release like a double album.
That's right. Yeah, they had like a ton of material written, and it got to the point where they realized, well, we can't do a double album. These are the 13 that are good enough, and these should be on the album. And then they kind of workshopped the rest of them for later, to the point where, like, I think Load is like their longest album.
It is.
And they promoted that, didn't they?
Well, that was the thing. That was the thing with CDs, is it wasn't so much quality as it was, look at how much music we can put on this disc for you to listen to at once. Right. To an example from my world, Kiss, and this is 89, so this is like CDs are brand new pretty much. They released an album called Hot in the Shade, and it was the same thing. It was like 15 songs, and I don't know the runtime, but it's like they could have trimmed like 5 songs off of it, and it would have been a great album. But they decided to throw everything they had on it, and it's not their best effort. So yeah, but that was the thing. That was how much music can we put on these discs. And I believe the last song, The Outlaw Torn, which is like 9 minutes long, it was even longer. But they had to cut it because if you exceed a certain time on a CD, it makes it more susceptible to skipping.
Right. And they were so dead set on keeping that extra minute on Outlaw because they were so into the jam that came from it. And if you listen to S&M, they do the full jam of Outlaw Torn with the symphony, and like you get an idea of what it was supposed to be. It's really cool, but they had to cut it down because it got way too close to the 90-minute or 80-minute mark on the CD that it could take. They really filled it out.
Hour and 18 minutes is the runtime for Load.
And a CD would take 80 minutes. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So they really they got as close as they could without causing issues.
Yeah, they went right up to that line, and we're careful not to cross it.
it, it's funny nowadays that we look at music as released on singles
Mm-hmm.
and like 3 minute increments. And I even remember in like the mid 2000s when Drowning Pool released their first album after their original singer had died. And I was a
Mm-hmm.
Drowning Pool fan. That album was like 31 minutes. And I was so pissed because I went out
Yeah.
and bought it.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this record 30 minutes
Yeah.
long? And it showed why, because they'd had like two good songs. But
Right.
the point I'm trying to make here is that like the length of these albums did matter at the time. Nowadays not so much, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, almost everything's digital, so you can release anything at any time and it doesn't matter as long as you have the song to listen to.
Right. 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 Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as the lead up to this album before we start actually digging into the material on the album?
I mean, that we're gonna get, as we get into the material, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on with James and his life, and he's mostly writing about his relationship with his mom,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on his dad gets sick and he actually leaves during the middle of the writing of the material for Load, and like locks himself, not locks himself, but he like places himself in a tent in Virginia for a bunch of days and writes lyrics with lead tipped bullets,
Mm.
which when I read that, I was like, that's the most James thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Because we heard stories of him going into Russia and poaching bears and doing shots all night and
Right.
getting hammered and then, killing bears. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was just the most James thing ever. But he's talking about more family, his family, than he is talking about politics or talking about any of the stuff that was very, that was the dominant topic
Mm-hmm.
on, say, Master Puppets or And Justice for All. He had really started to move away from telling stories that were biblical in nature or
Mm-hmm.
newsworthy stories. He was going more personal, and
Yeah.
that was something worth looking into at the time.
Okay. So the album's released June 4th, 1996. So again, we are right upon the 25th anniversary of that. The first taste that though that a lot of us heard was the first single Until It Sleeps, which they released in May. So a couple weeks before. What did you when you heard the first single? What were your thoughts? Uh,
I've always, I mean, I like Until It Sleeps. It's one of those songs that kind of goes in and out of favor with me at the
mm-hmm.
same time.
Yeah.
But like it always, it's a heavy song in terms of lyrical content and just the way that it becomes bombastic at certain times. Like you hear the symphony that they eventually put into the song in
Mm-hmm.
S&M.
Yeah.
And that's how I always listen to Until It Sleeps, is that version. But
Yes.
like they started really experimenting with stuff like percussion and other elements that weren't just guitars and drums, vocals. So I like that.
Yeah.
It was such a weird song for Metallica, but it was kind of the right song for them at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah,
did
and
you
it was
think? What were
kind
your
of
thoughts when you heard it?
I remember thinking that it was pretty good. Um I thought it was kind of like a natural progression from songs like Nothing Else Matters and The Unforgiven. Um so yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I think it's a pretty good song. I'm like you. There are times I hear it where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a good song, and then there are other times where I'll hear it and I'm like, I'm not really into that. So if I'm listening to a shuffle, it comes up, I'll skip it, or I'll change the radio station if I'm hearing it on the radio. But it's it's a pretty good song, I think. Um,
Yeah.
the
And again, going back to James and the lyrical concept,
Yeah,
like it's about his mom's dying of cancer and how
yes,
he is dealing with that. And
mm-hmm.
so he's going very personal with his lyrics, and it's you can tell in the way that he's singing. You can hear it, excuse me, you can hear it in the way that he's giving his singing his song.
Yes, yes. The second single released in September of that year, "Hero of the Day." Again, when I first heard it, I thought it was okay. And now it's on the bottom end for me on this album. It's not one of my
Really?
favorite songs. Yeah, I don't know why. It's just not, doesn't do it for me anymore. What about you?
This song is still a favorite of mine only because it has um it's like a heavy country song.
Mm-hmm.
It has certain elements that like you the way that the chorus gallops,
Yeah.
it makes it feel like the cavalry's coming, like the horses are coming to get you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that. And just the it's so, again, going back to the idea of bombastic sounds, you can hear, can't you hear your babies crying now?
Mm-hmm.
And you get to the solo and it soars above the heavens, and it's just, there's something there. Again, I go back to the S&M album and I listen to it, and it further opens up the way the song should have sounded when they produced it.
Yeah.
It adds to it. It becomes a companion piece. So
Right.
I do like the song. I continue to go back to it because it's such a good song that builds and builds, and you get to the end and it's like it resolves perfectly
Yeah.
in my brain.
Okay. Yeah. The third single, I don't remember ever hearing this on the radio. Was Mama Sad. And it's very, you talked about how the Hero of the Day was like a heavy country song. This is like straight country, complete with steel guitar.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of this one. It's, again,
Yeah.
it's in that same theme of being about his mom and stuff. But it's, again, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not something I would probably go out of my way to listen to a lot either.
This song was the first song I tried to learn on guitar
Okay.
when I first picked up a six string, because I was like, that opening riff to me was like, it's something I hadn't really heard before, and it's just a D minor chord,
Mm-hmm.
but like there was just something in there that I was like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And I never really learned the song properly, but yeah, it's very country, and I remember the video is very old timey 1800s country movie western style, with James with the big hat, and he's in the back of a carriage cart. I think I haven't gone back and watched it, but yeah, I remember they made a video for it, but I don't, like you, I never remember hearing it on the radio. I just knew that a video existed for it. And again, I don't consider it much of a Metallica song. I kind of just consider it a song that I like, and it doesn't matter who sang it. I just I just like the song. But Until It Sleeps kind of goes in and out of favor for me.
Right. And then the last single, released in January of '97, was King Nothing. And I remember really liking this one when it came out. You get
Heavy.
I love the opening, that just sustained guitar until the bass kicks in. And then, Jason gets to shine. I love, I'm sure as you as well, as being a fellow bassist, I love the songs where, the bass kind of is out front and leads the melody of the song, as opposed to following what the guitars are doing. This is kind of like the opposite. Very heavy. I still really like this song.
Me too. It was the spiritual successor to Enter Sandman in my brain. And it's not just because the end of it was Often Never Neverland. It was just the way the chords were structured, the way the song sounds. Like, I was like, this is just Sandman, but it's darker, if that was possible.
Right.
And I loved it. And like you said, like, we're both bassists, and you hear that riff come in and you're just like, oh, this is different. This isn't normal Metallica fare. And that's because, Bob Rock, when they did the Black Album, told Jason, like, stop thinking like a guitar player, start thinking like a rhythm player, start playing like a bassist. And that changed Jason forever, and the way that he played and the way that he approached song writing and song playing.
Yeah.
So
and bringing Bob Rock
really
in, Bob Rock himself is a bass player. So
that's right.
Bringing him in it made them put more focus, because the knock against one of the knocks against Injustice is you can't hear Jason. Like, where's the bass? I don't know. Like, so
yeah, the story where they're in the control room and James and Lars are telling the producer to pony up the faders, more drums, no more guitars, no more drums, and then you've got just no bass.
Yeah. And
over the years, people have kind of, because of games like Rock Band, they've kind of picked out the bass lines and like reinserted them into the album. I think there's an album out there called And Justice for Jason that you can find on YouTube. And you can hear all the bass lines reinserted and produced and mixed much better than the original would have been. They did it with Saint Anger later, and we're not talking about that now,
Yeah.
but like people went and redid vocals, they redid the drum can drums and just made it all sound so much better. Because again, some of these albums they're lost because of the way they were produced and mixed.
Mhm.
And the content becomes garbage because
Right.
it just wasn't done right.
Right. Yep. So those
But
are
not King Nothing.
no. That yeah.
That was good.
I still, like I said, I still really like that song. I think old Rick Boogs should be on SmackDown next week, playing this in the Nakamura as part of the Nakamura King Corbin feud.
As long as he plays it right, that's
Yeah,
all I want.
exactly.
I have very low standards. I just want him to make it sound right.
Exactly. So those are the singles. What other? Okay, so let's start. We'll start. What are there any low points on the album for you?
Oh, I think Cure may have been one of them.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list now. I'm looking at the songs, and Bleeding Me kind of takes some time to get to. Those two, and they're next to each other. So Cure is nah, and then Bleeding Me kind of it just takes a lot of time to build to the point that they're trying to get to.
Okay.
It's very, very slow.
Yeah, I agree with Cure. It's not so much bad; it's just not very memorable. Like it's
Yeah.
There's just not like anything that grabs you. Another song like that for me is Ronny. Like that one, like I just listened to it and it's not. There's nothing like
I love it.
That part.
I love that song.
Okay, all right.
I like the riff. Like I like the.
Okay, yeah.
I like that.
Okay, yeah. That's true.
It's hooky. That's what it is.
Now for me, Bleeding Me, I think is might be my favorite song on the album.
Okay.
I love that song. So Bleeding Me and Ain't My Bitch, I could have I was really surprised to find out they weren't singles because I know for sure Ain't My Bitch was played on the radio in Detroit. And I could
Detroit was playing everything off of Metallica. Like you guys would simulcast concerts for God's sake. I used to have the bootlegs of them. I used to go and find them and download them.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that.
And I could have swore Bleeding Me was too, because I do remember those two songs more than any of the other songs that weren't quote unquote singles. So it's not I don't think it's just a case of my dad had the album type thing, because it's not like he played it a lot, when it was usually he played it on his way to and from work, in the car or whatever. So it's not like I was around a lot when he was listening to it. So those two songs, Bleeding Me, I thought is a really cool song. Again, the S&M version takes it up another notch, I think. And then Ain't My Bitch is just a cool kick-ass opener. Makes you want to drive fast. Like I really like that song.
That was the first demo. That was the first song that they had put together for Load while they were on the road. So they called it Streamline. I think that was the working title.
Okay.
And then it became Waste My Hate. Yeah. King Nothing was called Load, by the way. That was its working title.
Oh, okay.
And Hero of the Day was called Moldy. The rest have just been kind of their own regular names as far as we know.
Okay. Yeah, I think 2x4 is a cool song. The House that Jack
I love that.
The House That Jack Built's a decent song. Like I said, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything outright bad. Is either not memorable, like I said, not memorable, or just not my favorite. I wouldn't say I hate any of the songs on this album. So
there's a lot of exploration in the rest of the album. Like you talk about House That Jack Built, that was they used a bunch of talk box, and that's something that wasn't super that wasn't really their thing. Meanwhile, you've got Bob Rock. I would I would guess, brought in the talk box and said, try this, because
Mm-hmm.
he worked on Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet.
Yes.
And that's, that's a Sambora special, is that talk box.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he brought it in and said, hey, James, hey, Kirk, who wants to try it? And one of them was just probably Kirk was like, oh, me, I'll do it. And
Right.
next thing you knew, House Jack Built, it's all over that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it adds to it too. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
I love that they because they got kind of more experimental with this, they started stripping stuff down. So no longer was Lars trying to show off and play ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
drum patterns. He was just
Yeah.
playing straight to the beat. And whenever he had any sort of fill, he kept it pretty straightforward. And people give him shit because he goes to the snare all the time now, and he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
I think his reasoning for that was like the hardest. What was it? He said something about Black Sabbath fills being all snare, and it was the since that's the darkest metal, I'm doing it too. I think that was his kind of his link between the two, and it makes whatever sense.
Okay.
But in 2x4, yeah, exactly, it's Lars. But the opening with 2x4, like that's what it is. That opening drum fill is just that's it.
That opening drum fill is really, really cool. I do like that a lot. And the House that Jack Built, I think that song does give you that Alice in Chains Soundgarden vibe at the beginning, especially. Let's see here. Poor Twisted Me. I love the delay on the guitar on the intro.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, and it sounds exactly the way it should. It sounds poor, it sounds twisted, and you should feel bad for it. It's the right sound for it. I love that.
Yes. And Wasting My Hate is just a great song title.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's such a good song too.
Yeah. No, that's another really good song. So overall, I guess I could say that you're in the camp that you really like this album, Joel.
Yeah, but it took time. I mean, I didn't exactly love it right out of the box. I think it's more that it took some time to age on me. It's similar to how some people are considering Saint Anger now, in certain circles. That the songwriting is there, that the riffs are there, but we all know what the problem was with Saint Anger, and that comes down to the drums. And some people don't like down tuning, but like at the same time, they had done stuff in D standard. They had done this album is entirely a half step down for you musicians out there. It's all in E flat, so it shouldn't be. The songs, the key isn't what makes the song. It's the song that makes the song. So anyway, well, and again, we talk about in the Black Album stuff how they're gonna down tune. What song is it? Oh my god. I have it in the back of my head. Oh, kill me. It goes to D. They take it down from E to D.
Anyway. It'll come to you. It'll come to you.
Yeah, mark for edit or something.
Stay tuned for that episode in a couple months, and we'll
look at Sad But True. Sad But True is the song I'm thinking of.
There you go.
Sad But True was originally where the riff was in E, and then Bob Rock tells them to do it in D, and this is hilarious. Well, I'm not going to tell you the story, but let's just say that Metallica's heads explode. Watch the video and you'll find out why. But because of this more experimental Metallica, I've learned to appreciate it more.
Okay.
I think history has been kind to the album because like it was organic. It was authentic. And James doesn't think that Metallica was being authentic and organic at the time, but everyone else in the band did.
Right.
And that mattered.
Yeah.
So I've learned to like the album, and I think S&M really helped paint this album in a better light.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Well, it's fun not to get too off topic, but you talk about the, dropping the D for a Saint, again, like, whereas Load is very, very grunge and alternative, and Reload as well. By the time they get to Saint Anger, that, you got your corns and all that kind of stuff. That's what was going on in, what was it, 2003, 2002?
Yeah. That
time frame. So again, you kind of got to look at what's happening around them at the time, and they gotta keep up.
I think one thing that people don't really understand with Metallica is that Lars and James are the perfect foils for each other. They are brothers because they're opposites. Lars, like, he loves doing everything differently. He loves being changed, and James is very traditional. He just wants it to sound this. He doesn't want to be pushed to do differently.
Yeah.
And they brought Bob Rock in, who did a lot of things differently with a lot of different bands. And even he'll tell James, he's like, "What are you talking about? Authentic and organic? Like, you guys were enjoying the process. You were doing things differently. You were more relaxed. Lars was in a good mood. Like, everyone was enjoying the load and reload sessions, to the point where, like, I think James just kind of says it because his hindsight is just negative
Yeah.
because of the backlash that they faced in the media.
Right.
Not even the media, because honestly, the media were good about it. Most people were actually pretty high on the album,
Yeah.
but just the backlash from fans, he had to hear that, and that just kind of turned them all off.
Right. Yeah.
But one thing that I love is going back to just Lars liking things that are different. He says something that kind of resonates with me now. Talks about Kurt Cobain blurring the lines of genre in music, and Lars then equates it to just being one big soup. He says one big effing soup, but we're a family show here.
Yeah.
And he just said,
Try to be.
some bands are harder and try to be. And some bands are harder, some bands are softer. But at the end of the day, it's all just one big soup.
Mhm.
And so genres are not beholden to their songs and their styles. Every band can be different.
Right.
And I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's again, not having the kind of preconceived notions of what Metallica quote unquote should be. Like, it still has, for me, like, it's easily identifiable as when I hear Until It Sleeps. That's that's Metallica.
Yeah.
It sounds like Metallica to me, just as much as anything from Ride the Lightning sounds like Metallica. Like, it's all the same band, you know. So
yeah, they have their sound signature.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they are, and nobody can take that away from them.
Mhm.
Did you ever like watch any of their live stuff? I mean, you talked about Binge and Purge and all that.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Cunning Stunts?
No.
Did you see that album
Uh-uh.
or that live album? So that was like the live record that I could never get a hold of because it was so damn expensive by the time I found it.
Right.
And eventually I did, and like that was kind of a game changer for me. That if you go out of your way and find Cunning Stunts, I think it's 97. So it's like it's the Load tour. I think it's just before Reload's coming out. So like they start playing a few tunes from there, but they're not right. You know, they're not ripe, and they're not playing the songs. That stuff's in there. Go find it. Cunning Stunts is yeah, I know why they changed the name.
Yes.
That's the live album that kind of got me more invested in Metallica over the years.
Nice. All right.
It's good.
Yeah, for sure. Joel, anything else you want to add to this conversation today?
Man, I think a lot of people need to give more thought to these two albums, to Load and Reload. Give it another listen. I think having the time to go back and having the time to think not of Metallica as they cut their hair. Oh my God, they're playing blues songs. That they're not that Metallica from Master of Puppets. Just listen to the albums on their own. Let them stand on their own. And I think a lot of people will change their minds as to what Metallica was doing in that period, in that mid-90 period. There's something to it.
There you go.
And thanks for having me, man. This is always fun.
Of course.
I love it.
Of course. Love chatting music with you. So I was like, was going down my list of albums, and I saw that, these two were, right next to each other. I'm like, I just know just the guy. So
I appreciate that.
Joel, where can people find you?
I'm not hard to find. I'm everywhere on the internet at Joel Pearl, JoelPearl, twitch.tv/Joel Pearl. I play music. I know that, Chris, you're here with us once in a while in that chat room, and I appreciate it. And yeah, that's where I am. I also host a wrestling podcast. It's called Tim and Joel Call It in the Ring. We're live every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we're also live every Sunday at noon Eastern, talking about the week in wrestling, talking about different shows. My co-host Tim is a newer wrestling fan, so he has a totally different view of things than I do. And I've been a lifelong fan. So I love that dynamic between us. Give us a chance. We might be your new favorite podcast. Who knows?
That was my other question. Thank you for reminding me. are there, because I love playing this game. Are there any wrestling correlations with this album that you can think of?
I feel like Until It Sleeps was used for something. I wouldn't be surprised. But other than that, or maybe King Nothing.
Maybe.
Other than that, I can't think of anything that would have
People,
been used.
if you can find something, leave it in the comments, please. I'd love to know. Because again,
Good call.
this channel is called Music and Moonsaults, so it's all about music and wrestling in harmony together. So even though we're focusing on the music today, I do like to interject some wrestling when I can. So, all right. Well, follow Joel everywhere he's at and support him. And then you can follow me on Twitter at IBNSChris. And please subscribe and like and comment and like me. I have a Facebook page, facebook.com/music and moonsaults. Hit me up over there. Until next time, guys, see ya.